Hey y'all, Melissa here at Twin Oaks Family Farm, Southeast Ohio. Thanks for joining me. Hey, this video in our vlog, just checking in with y'all and catching you up on how this attempt at a 72-hour fast is going. I am 51 hours in on a 72-hour fast, so I'm feeling strong still. So I think I'm gonna make it on this one. A lot of y'all know I tried this a week ago, and at 24 hours, I was feeling great, honestly, for being partway into a fast. But at about 28 hours, I hit a wall and I had physical symptoms that are not typical for me during a fast. So I pretty much was clued into, hey, my body's not responding well to this fast at this time. And I gave it a little time, but by about hour 30, I knew there was no way that I was carrying out a 72-hour fast safely at that juncture. So I think I ended up breaking the fast by eating at about hour 31 on that attempt. And so starting with that, to tell anybody who ears perk up at, oh, a 72-hour fast, maybe you ought to do that. I am not putting out there that anybody and everybody should attempt a 72-hour fast. Honestly, fasting in any form is not for everybody. A little bit of extended fasting, like 72 hours, is definitely not for everybody. And aside from the fact that it's just hard, it's just really, really, really hard, it does have huge impact on what's going on in the body. So I'm not an expert on that, but I've been living in my skin for 4 decades plus. So I am an expert on my own reactions to things. And I know, as most of us do, I know when something is pushing too far on what the physical limitations of my body are in most instances. So in that instance, the first attempt I made at the 72-hour fast, I bottomed. I'm going to say I bottomed at 29 hours, but just because of the circumstances, I couldn't really get to food until hour 31. So I went ahead and ate a little bit, and actually what I ended up experiencing in that instance, I thought I was hungry and I thought I wanted to eat, but my family had spaghetti, and I made a bowl of spaghetti out of what they had fixed for myself, a normal portion, and I took about 2 bites of it, and my brain said, you're not keeping this food down. And so I was like, that's kind of weird, because I really thought I could eat a lot. And I kind of just took a breath and took maybe 3 or 4 more bites, and it wasn't getting any better. So I ended up putting that food away, and it was late in the evening anyway. So we had a family routine of prayers and discussion that we needed to complete. And even with not feeling well, like, that's such an important part of our household that we did that. And then I was in bed. I was like, I just have to rest. And actually then, after sleeping it off, the next day I felt excellent. And so that was a 31-hour fast that I made at that point. But I decided I'm trying again this week. So this is February 26, 2025 as we're recording this. And I decided I'm trying again this week. I'm going for the 72-hour fast, because part of the motivation on that for me was I kind of have a timeline in my mind of, I wanted to do a 72-hour fast this winter, but I want to have it accomplished before Ash Wednesday, which this year is coming up on March 5th, which actually is a week from today. So I'm running out of time to complete a 72-hour fast prior to March 5th. So I was like, I got to do it. I got to do it this week. It's a goal, but it's also a drive and a purpose that I want to accomplish this. There's really no pre-existing condition why I cannot, other than just, I've been slack and lazy about healthy lifestyle and permitted unhealthy lifestyle in terms of a lot of processed foods. That's been my downfall on how I've got here, So as I've said, going to use fasting fairly aggressively, coordinated with better lifestyle choices in terms of what I'm eating, when I'm eating, portions I'm eating, and try to incorporate all that to work toward better health. But I'm not going to do like a 72-hour fast every week. I'm not going to do that. So part of the reason I wanted to have the fast done, the 72 hours before March 5th, is because with Lent, season of Lent starting, and if you're a Christian, you recognize that right away. If you're not Christian, you might not be familiar with this season of Lent, but it basically builds up to our celebration of the resurrection of Jesus. So we go through sort of a mourning period, mourning as in dwelling on sad events, a mourning time of reflecting on the crucifixion of Christ. And then, it builds up to his death, but also to his resurrection, which for us Christians is our hope and is our source of joy and faith and hope. So Lent is coming up. So during Lent, what I want to do is on Ash Wednesday we'll fast, but then every week during Lent, and on Good Friday we'll fast later on, but every week during Lent I want to 24-hour fast on Tuesdays and Fridays. So I want to have this 72-hour fast done before that. But I was going to tell you a couple of things that like I experience pretty predictably when I attempt fasting, and a couple of things that I always kind of like rediscover when I'm fasting. So, and then a couple of purposes other than lifestyle change in terms of diet and well-being physically, a couple other reasons that people might fast and that I sometimes choose to fast as well. So, physical experiences, fasting. So up to trying this 72 hours, I think the longest fast I had done otherwise was 48 hours. And 72 is kind of a stretch from 48. Like the next logical step would be 60, 48 hours, then a 60-hour fast sometime, and then a 72-hour fast. But I was like, no, if I can do 48, I can get to 72 at some point if I'm well prepared and it's timed right. So I went ahead and pursued that. But the longest other than that I've done is 42 hours, and I've done 24-hour fast, not much issue. 30-hour fast, not much issue. 36-hour fast. So certainly not an expert in it, but just the day-to-day experience of it. I do experience some hunger pangs. So for me, like a lot of times that'll be at about 8 hours and at about 14 hours. And then maybe as you go on, sometimes during the periods of the day when it's your normal meal time. So, some of that is physical. I think some of that is probably psychological, because I'm like, I think I should be eating this time of day. So maybe it's telling my stomach to tell me that I'm hungry, and maybe I'm not really. But occasional hunger signals from my stomach that like, I'm kind of hungry, But then if the fast is going well, that doesn't really last that long. Less than 30 minutes, and that hunger sensation in my experience has gone away. The other thing I run into, even when the fast is going well, physical cues, is not muscle shakiness, not muscle tremors, but just noticeable fatigue in the large muscles. So like in my upper arms, in my upper legs, some across my back and shoulders, and particularly the one that always surprises me, because I'm like, that is really a strange place to be cognizant of muscle fatigue, in my neck, both sides of my back of my neck, almost to the point where like not dizzy at all, but like my head feels heavy. So for me, that's a typical response during fasting. Sleep quality for me is not compromised during fasting. I'm able to sleep, and knowing those kind of normal responses of my body gave me the tools when I was trying a fast that for whatever reason at that time my body couldn't handle. gave me the tools to recognize, hey, these responses are not normal. Because when I had to break that fast, like I was starting to see a little bit of spots, like if you get any kind of migraines, kind of like that optic aura that can go along with migraines. I got a little bit of that. And I was getting a little bit of shaky tremorness in my muscles. I know that's not a word, but I make up words a lot of times. So was getting a little bit of that in my large muscles, and I was like, yeah, that's not normal, and had that nausea feeling, which I attributed to, oh, I think I'm hungry. I wasn't hungry. I was like sick to my stomach. So those were things that cued me into, hey, the body's not responding well to this fast. And so, and that's why I said at the beginning, like, fasting's not for everybody. I know there have to be individuals that probably can't tolerate fasting under any circumstances. And certainly, one step beyond that, even if you found you can tolerate fasting, there may be a limit to it. And if you are in a fast, I've said before, there is zero shame in breaking the fast if your body is saying to you, this is not working for me right now. So being respectful of what's going on. So then the other two things that I rediscover when I'm fasting, and other reasons that we might fast. So, and they're kind of hand in hand, one of them. But other things that I rediscover during fasting is, first thing is, food is like joy for me. I think I can say for my household as well, like, we prioritize mealtime together. We always have in 2.5 decades of life in this household. And we like to cook things and make things and try things, and we have favorite foods, and we love to enjoy those together. So, a lot of our dependency on food is physical, and food is required to some extent. Obviously good food, whole food, unprocessed food is required to keep our bodies functioning well. But a lot of my food dependency is like emotional and just tied into, I enjoy having a meal with my family, and I enjoy sitting around the table, catching up with everybody's day and sharing ideas. And so, that's a lot of the reason that I eat the things I eat, that I'm keyed into the things I'm keyed into on when I want to eat and how much I want to eat. So just recognizing that, fasting kind of takes that control back. And in all of life, this is such an important thing, to have our minds in control over the impulses of our bodies. And you can really get into some great discussions on that. But it even takes me right to when we deal with sin in our lives, okay? Sin is either tempting us from the world, the devil, or the flesh. And so when it comes to sins of the flesh, and even giving into sins, temptation from the world, temptation from the devil, when we get into the issue of sinliness versus righteousness, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, like, most or all sins that are committed are because our impulses of our body took precedence over our mind. And so, when you deal with that, and I know that's a whole nother topic from fasting, but when you deal with sin, the main thing we need to do to combat sin is have the mind in control of the body. And those two things obviously are so intrinsic to our existence. In fact, as Christians, we know that God gave us two very important gifts, right? A body and a soul. And within that body and that soul, we have this willfulness. And so that's, our mind can control the willfulness. But if our mind doesn't control the willfulness, our body will. So a lot of the times with food, we all probably have experienced like letting our mind let go of control of what we choose to eat, how much we choose to eat, when we choose to eat. And if we let the body just have control over that, that's just going to become a gluttonous fiasco. And that's that probably sums up the American food system. A gluttonous fiasco where the body is in control with its cravings and telling the mind what we're going to eat. And if we flip that script and get the mind in charge of what we're going to eat, because like French fries, supposedly eating French fries from any modern fast food restaurant, the way that they're cooked is like the equivalent of consuming tons of cigarettes, smoking tons of cigarettes. Sodas, lots of interesting ingredients in sodas, but even diet sodas and diet sodas, and probably even the like soda zeros, what's one of the ingredients in there? Sodium benzoate. Sodium benzoate tells your body don't burn fat. Okay, so like on the mind level, like if I know I'm trying to lose weight, but I'm consuming something that's going to tell my body don't burn fat for a while, my brain understands you really shouldn't consume that then. But if the body is like, well, I like the taste of it and I like to crave it and I want that craving satisfied. Well, if the body's in charge, I'm drinking the soda. But if the brain is in charge, I'm probably going to refrain from the soda and probably try to find a healthier alternative or just totally decide I'm flipping the switch, I'm going without that, right? So that's just one example of how when we're fasting and we get into those really tough spaces, that we are giving our mind an opportunity to be in charge of the impulses of the body. And that is beneficial with our eating, but for me, beneficial with my eating, but also beneficial in just discipline. And they always told us what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And anything hard you're trying to do, what was always the thing? It builds your character. Well, it really does build your character. And I can't tell you, so this is the second thing, I can't tell you how many times during fasting, just this 72-hour fast, I'm like, every second is hard. Every second, so I want to get up and get food right now. And every second is hard to tell myself, no, you're not going to get food right now. You're fine, hard things. Life is full of hard things. And what I always rediscover during fasting is really hard. But I've been through other hard things in my life too. And what I've learned is when I can discipline myself to do something hard that's like not necessary, but I'm compelling myself to do it anyway, that muscle within me that can handle hard things, like that grit, that determination, that drive, that sense of purpose, that can say, it's hard, but we're doing this anyway. We have to push through. We have to succeed. When we do hard things, like if a fast is something that your body can tolerate, when we do hard things intentionally, then we work on practicing the muscle for doing hard things. So then when the hard things that we can't control come up in life, we have some backbone and some grit to get through them because we've disciplined ourselves to do that. So that said, a couple other reasons that people do fast, one can be for well-being, like I'm trying to do, like trying to change your health habits and incorporate some fasting into your routine for that. But another reason is because it's a form of suffering, and suffering is redemptive. It's a form of suffering, and suffering is redemptive. And again, I'm going to go back to, hey, if we're Christians, we're already relating to where I'm coming from on this, because Christ suffered. Christ's suffering was redemptive for anybody who turns to him in faith. And when we suffer, if we put our intention with it, and you may not be familiar with this, but we've experienced it, and all I can do is describe it to you. But when we suffer, we can just suffer, and we cannot give any thought to other people, to Jesus, to everything else going on in the world, and we can just be alone in our sufferings, and so be it. But when we do suffer, we can also put intention with that and unite our suffering with other people's suffering, and unite our suffering with the suffering that Christ experienced. And then our suffering isn't just random suffering anymore. Our suffering unites with Christ's suffering and becomes redemptive suffering that has purpose. So, as you're going through suffering, you can be like, we pray a lot, so I pray a lot, try to encourage my family to pray a lot, and we pray daily as a family. But one of the things that we talk about is, if we're suffering, we can turn that into a prayer. Prayer is just lifting your hearts and your minds to Christ. So if we're suffering, and as I'm doing this, I'm like, I've had this happen to me before on a video. Someone will put a comment, I thought this was about such and such, and this is just propaganda. Okay, it isn't propaganda. This is our life. Like, this is real life for us. These are the real things that we go through, and the real things that we do to manage life, So we really are practicing our faith and praying together daily as a household, and that's why I'm sharing it with you. And these are things that I experience in fasting. But when we try to tell each other and encourage each other here, when you're suffering, like, you can turn that into prayer, lift it up to the Lord, and be like, I'm suffering through this. Hear my prayer for so and so going through whatever, and you can put intention with your suffering and make it redemptive instead of random. And so why not do that? So that's one thing. And then the other reason that people might fast, well, this goes right with that, but it's a form of suffering that you can take on that becomes spiritual. That's what I was going to say. The other thing is it becomes spiritual. So the spiritual part, and then delineated from that, the second part, which I kind of mentioned, and I said it's all tied together, is another reason you might intentionally take on a fast is to build your own discipline. I said before, one of the things I rediscover every fast is that, like, it works on that ability to endure hard things, because there are segments of fast where every single second is so hard to stick to the fast, and you just want to break the fast, even if it's not the time you planned on breaking the fast. Now, obviously, the caveat is if you're getting sick, you need to break the fast. It doesn't matter. You need to break the fast if you're getting sick from it. But if you're having normal responses to a fast and you're able to endure it, there's still times where your brain is like, I want food now, go get it. And so it just gives you that opportunity to build discipline. So those are two reasons, in addition to working on our well-being, physical well-being, that people may fast. They may choose to endure the suffering and offer it up as redemptive suffering and do that for spiritual reasons. And they may also choose to fast as a form of just discipline. And that's what I'll be doing coming up in Lent. I don't know what my family's going to choose to do, but we do have days during Lent when we are taught that we should fast out of respect for the historical events of those days. Ash Wednesday, Good Friday. So that's one aspect. But then also during that period of Lent, because we know what it is having us reflect on with Christ's suffering and leading up to that crucifixion, we are asked to give something up during Lent. So, you could just give up, if you drink soda, you could just give up drinking soda for all of Lent. If you drink beer, you could just give up drinking beer for all of Lent. If you like a cookie after supper and a piece of pie after dinner and something sweet, a donut in the morning with your breakfast, like, you might just say, I'm giving up all sweets for Lent. A lot of people do that. So me, I'm gonna fast on Tuesdays and Fridays. That's what I'm gonna set out to do during Lent. Not sure yet what my family will choose, but anyway, so that's what we're leading up to. So that's another reason people would maybe choose to fast is that they're doing a spiritual exercise practice where they're choosing to give something up. But ultimately, that's what that's doing. That is building up our ability to discipline ourselves, which ultimately we want to build up so that we can reject sin. But this whole thing that I talked about, where the mind being in charge of the impulses of the body, it's all tied into all of that. It's all tied into us rejecting bad food choices. It's all tied into us rejecting sin in our lives and around us. So anyway, we covered a whole lot of ground there, right? Hey, let me show you Tanner and Gus. Boy, they have it really rough, don't they? They have it really rough. So anyway, we're going to wrap this one up because I really just wanted to tell y'all what it's like right now at like 52 hours into a 72-hour fast. And I did kind of get expanding on some of my experiences and reflections on fasting, but I sure appreciate y'all joining us, and I hope that you're doing great. God bless y'all.